Okay, so we're back, still on page 34. Okay, early settlements were more determined by a series of mainly physical factors. So again, early settlements back hundreds of years ago, it was the site was the important thing. Okay, there wasn't much talk of a situation at all because economics hadn't really become a thing. Migration of people and communications hadn't really set up. So the first thing that really mattered was the physical factors. Okay, so if I can just move that down so we can see all of these. Okay, so we've looked at some of these already, right? Let's get underlining. A wet point near water, that's all it is. Okay, this was essential as water is needed virtually every day and it's very heavy to carry. So being by rivers gave you safe and permanent supply. Now obviously for growing crops was the first need, and for drinking and bathing. Then water was used for small industries, pumping wheels or moving things. All right. Then it was used for trade. Once ships were built, you could sail down rivers, get to the ocean, and trade. So wet points became very important. All right. A dry point is a little bit different. You need to avoid flooding. So you don't want to be in the middle of a river. You don't want to be in a swamp, something like that. So you had to find a balance. Okay. And only settlements that found a good balance between all of these factors would then go on to develop into major settlements. Building materials, obviously you need to be stone, wood, clay, need to be obtained locally as these were very heavy and bulky to move at the time when transport was poorly developed. There was no trains or planes or cars, so we're talking about you need to be right beside where you could get regular building materials to build your settlement up. Okay. Moving on then as well, the next, another very important defense against surrounding tribes was sometimes necessary. So I've put here historically important, not so much today. Okay, most of these are all historically important, not so much today, because we can transport building materials, we can transport water, we don't need to be beside a river to trade, and so on. Rivers gave good protection again, or being the top of hills or mountains gave you commanding views and made you very hard to defeat. All right. Being close to a fuel supply was needed for heating and cooking. Again, not so much today because we can transport energy all around the world, and we've come up with lots of new ways of making energy. Okay, so you should see a lot of these are dated now, but historically we're looking at how settlements began, and you had to be beside all of these things. Okay, obviously food supplies, less important today due to transport again. Were needed from the land nearby, some of which was suitable for rearing animals and some for growing crops. So you needed to have an area where you could grow your own food, because you couldn't just ship stuff in from all over the world. And that's one of the reasons Paris and London did so well. They were on this wide open flat land, easily watered for crops. Now, very important, nodal points is an important one, and this is still even true a little bit today. A nodal point is like a transport route or transport focus. These are where several valleys or natural routes met to create a central route. Okay, so for example, where two rivers joined, or where there was a valley between mountain ranges or something like that. Okay, it was very important as settlements began to develop and as people began to develop. Transport and trade became massive, and nodal points, you want to be right in the middle of the action. Okay, so where major routes cross going east to west, north to south, if you could have your settlement there, then you would get a lot more traffic, a lot more people passing through and growing wealth. All right, so nodal points is an important one. Again, bridging points is just another easy way to make transport. And the last one obviously is shelter and aspect. It's an advantage to be sheltered from strong winds or ocean current or strong tides or something like that. Okay, so it's good to have some shelter. You don't want to be on top of a mountain where you're going to get battered every day by winds and rain and so on. So a combination of all of these factors. No site will have all of them, but you want to have a combination of as many as you can, okay, to be a successful settlement. Now then, as our settlements began to increase in size over time, as the population increased, okay, settlements got bigger, and then they also start to spread out and cover more area. So there's two things. A settlement will have a size measured by the amount of people that are there, but also measured about the area it covers. Now that left us with two new things. We have an urban region and a rural region. Okay, so down here I have a picture of the rural area, okay, whereas here I have a picture of the urban core. So let's have a little look at some of the differences. You should already be able to spot a lot of differences between the two. Okay, there's many things to consider. We're going to think about population density, the number of people here compared to the number of people here, the age structure, what age groups do you think tend to live here and what age groups live out here, and the economic activity. What is the main kind of economic job source here compared to here? All right, so what I'm going to do is you're going to have to make a copy of this table, okay? Urban core versus rural areas. All right, so I need you to copy down this table into your books and I'll read through it very quickly. Now, population density, how many people in a place? Okay, so urban core has a very high density, lots of people. Rural areas, very low density, not many people. The same could be said for building density, lots of buildings, very few. The age structure, urban areas or cities will tend to have many more young adults, okay, whereas the rural area will be mainly older people and families, okay. Economic activity, types of jobs in our cities. Our urban core is cities, rural is countryside. So you can add cities here and countryside here. So you'll have retail, shopping, okay, large shops, offices, factories, museums, theatre, library, entertainment, clubs, all those kind of things, sports stadiums, all of that is found in here. Out in the rural area, what type of activities, what type of jobs? Farming, fishing, forestry, mining. Okay, some tourism. Recently we've added renewable energies out into the rural areas because we don't want this in the middle of our cities. Okay. Finally, settlement. These are some words I want you to note down. We look at these over the next couple of lessons, all right? But what I want you to look at mainly is high-rise building. You'll have low and high-rise building like flats, and then property is incredibly expensive, very expensive. Cheaper to live out here. Low-rise buildings, you're not going to have a skyscraper out in the middle of the countryside. You'll have small towns and villages. Okay, so make a copy of that just there. Alright, let's continue on. Okay, so once you got that down, we're going to make a couple of quick notes here and then back to New Wider World. There's 3 different patterns. Okay, so you can do a little subheading, settlement patterns. Alright, and we're going to just make a quick definition for each of those. So once you've got that little heading done, we'll continue. The first one is nucleated. So I wanted you to write down nucleated in this little sentence here. Okay, this is when several buildings are grouped together in an area. Alright, so again, the black lines here are crossroads. You got nucleated in here where there's a collection. Again, this would be the nodal point where the major routes cross. Alright, so this is nucleated. You can see here a lot of places gathered together. Okay, think of nucleus. Okay, the very center of in science. Okay. Dispersed then. Dispersed means spread out. So if you want to put spread out beside dispersed, you can. Isolated buildings found scattered around the countryside. They can be in small groups of 2 or 3 buildings. Alright, so again, isolated means to be by yourself. So this is our dispersed, okay, away from the major routes. It's out in the rural countryside and they're spread out. They're dispersed. Okay, so you can make a note of this and this. And our last one, linear. Okay, so we got our linear over here, okay? It's a line, essentially, and they're usually built along a transport route. Some buildings are strung out along a road or a river, sometimes said to be the settlement found along the main route of communication. So again, you can see the example here. Here's the main route in this area, and you've got all the buildings along it. So linear is a very simple one to remember, all right? They just form a line along, be it a river or a roadway or a railway or whatever it is. Okay, so there are your 3 patterns. We're going to jump back to page 36 of New Wider World. Okay, make sure you've got a note of each of those definitions.